Well, recap from tonight's small group discussion on joy. If you missed it, we just went through this idea of what is it? What is joy? What does joy even look like in our businesses? And actually had a really great time. It was a great discussion. So, yeah, we kind of talked about ways that we've seen joy in our business. Great points about working within your gifting and that being a source of joy, serving others and enjoying other people's successes on your team as being sources of joy. Talked about how comparison is a horrible companion to joy because it tends to take it away, and how having to hit the next rank is really hard in this business, or your goals are always kind of like never finished, and that tends to be a thief of joy for us. So I talked about that. Talked also about God actually resting on the seventh day and calling his work good. And what would that even look like for us to celebrate the work that we've done? So, yeah. And then Tasha?
Well, yeah, before we get into the stuff that I talked about, one thing that blew my mind was the concept of Jesus being the most joyous person ever. And I don't remember the exact verse, but talking about like being in the Father's will, that's where we find joy. And so we talked a little bit about when we're really there with God, like that's where we can find joy as opposed to trying to find happiness, right? And all these other things. So I thought that was a really, really cool part of the conversation. We talked a little bit about goal setting and joy and how like there's always these moving targets, and how when you're running a sales business, there's just always more sales, more growth, more everything. And just some observations around, not wanting to set a goal because you don't want to be a failure, setting a goal and then not meeting it because then you're a failure, and then meeting it like halfway through the month and then changing the goal and then being stressed out about not hitting that second goal, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So we talked about stopping. I'll just read the passage quickly. Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, especially your goals. I added that last part. But in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So what if we just, instead of just throwing out a goal, we just stopped and we prayed about it? And we let God speak to us on what our goals should be. And then we talked about the spiritual discipline of celebration. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, this idea that we're not naturally wired to celebrate. We're kind of naturally wired to see what's wrong in ourselves, or to not rejoice in the good that we've done, or that sort of thing. Not an issue for everybody, but a lot of humanity. And so, this idea of actively celebrating good things, and that God actually set out like feasts throughout the Old Testament that he wanted his people to partake in, and that they were disciplines for them. Like, I want you to stop. I want you to celebrate. I know you're busy working, but it's time to celebrate, and that's something that we can actually even engage in as a spiritual discipline, this idea of celebration.
Cool. And this didn't come up in the study, but I just had a thought. I'm going to just share it. So you're talking about God saying you should celebrate, but in my mind, there's the script running that goes, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And so I feel like that's definitely not God. And I think that's how we can know that the spiritual discipline of celebration is probably God. Because as soon as we start to think about celebrating something, we kind of hear the enemy going, nope, don't do it. You're not good enough. Even if you think you should celebrate, no way. And that's something that, messes up our joy. So we talked about praying about our goals. We talked about some really tactical, like practical things about goal setting, setting a low, a medium, and a high goal, and building your activities around the high goal, and still celebrating if you reach the low goal, as opposed to just like an all or nothing mentality on goal setting. And then also having the discipline to not change the goal halfway through if you've achieved it, to just go, hey, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kim had a challenge for us.
Right, which was basically to do that very thing. So it's the beginning of the month. What would it look like if we actually asked the Lord, like take a couple of days, ask the Lord, what goals should I have this month? What are goals that you would like me to have? And what celebrations are you calling me to in light of these goals? So that can be at the end of the month. Those can be weekly goals. I say pray about daily goals, and what celebrations would follow in light of those too. So also to feel free. We talked to the group about feeling free to post wins on our page so that we can celebrate with one another, because Tasha, you mentioned this during our time. We're actually not called to celebrate in isolation, but that, celebration in the Old Testament was a very communal activity. So wanting to do that with people together.
Cool. I think that's it.
I think that was it. And then join us next week for peace.
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 All right. Oh my gosh. I'm ending the recording on that. Next week. Peace.